Hey, it's Ryan with an updated fishing report for Big Stone Lake. It's early March and the bite's picking up. We'll get started with the ice and snow conditions. As far as ice goes, we have plenty. There's about 2 feet of ice on the lake. If you're bringing a fish house up, I'd recommend bringing an auger extension. Snow, there's quite a bit more than there was a couple of weeks ago. Now, a lot of it is blown off of the lake, but what's on the lake tends to be drifted up, especially around areas where there was a lot of activity before the storms. So areas where there was fish houses or old plowed roads, that's where you're going to find the drifts of snow, and those are the areas that you have to look out for when getting off the beaten path. Looking at the long-range forecast, it looks like things are going to be pretty consistent over the next 10 days. We're going to get a nice mild weekend with low winds. Early next week, we're going to see some flurries. But overall, we're not going to see the temperature really go up too much or down too much. It's just going to remain pretty consistent. We'll move on to the perch bite. The perch bite's heating up. We've definitely done better this week than we have in prior weeks. I think we're finally getting over the hump. The weather really hasn't changed for the better as far as temperature or snow melt. In fact, it's probably gone the opposite direction of what it should be for this time of year. But I think just overall the days are getting longer and the fish are starting to transition from the midwinter patterns more to the late season patterns. I think that's what's going on. I'm definitely seeing better schools of fish. They seem to be more congregated now than they were over the past few weeks. And I think we're just moving in the right direction overall. As far as locations for perch, there's a lot of perch in the lake. There's schools dotted up and down the lake. I've found active bites from anywhere up in that area around Bonanza all the way down to the south end of the islands. So there's a lot of fish out there. They're scattered over a large area in the basin. I'd recommend fishing for them in 12 to 14 feet of water. Some days you can do well getting towards the edge of the basin, maybe adjoining up to structure. You find that getting better and better, especially later in the season. But typically, it seems like the most consistent bite is just going to be on the flats in the general basin itself. Techniques that have been working well for us are pretty much just the standard. The gold tungsten jig, a 4 or 5 millimeter gold tungsten jig, is just tough to beat. It works day in, day out. It just gets the job done. Load it up with bugs. My favorite thing is spikes. They're durable. They stay on the hook well. Put a bunch of them on there. That way you don't have to keep rebaiting all the time. That's really the key with spikes, is they stay on the hook longer. They allow you to be more efficient. So put a bunch of them on there. That way you don't have to keep rebaiting, especially when the schools are below you, because you find that they come through for a few minutes. You got to try to catch as many fish as possible. Then they move on, and it can be 10, 15, 20 minutes before they come back. So you want to really capitalize on them while they're underneath you, and spikes allow you to do that better than any other bait. The second thing that's been working really well for us, and it's been kind of a dog all season, but it's been working really well over the last couple of days. And that's just the plain old hook and minnow. We've just put a dead stick down, a little split shot sinker, a number 6 octopus hook, about 18 inches off the bottom with a fathead or a crappie minnow. And a lot of times you catch the bigger perch on that during the day, and most days you catch your biggest fish of the day on that. But it's really gotten good for us the last couple days. I would definitely recommend putting it back down if you haven't been putting it down lately. I'll touch on the bluegills real quick also. The bluegill bite's mostly going to be on the south half of the lake. It seems like there's maybe a few gills farther north than that, but for the most part, the large majority of them are going to be on the south half of the lake. There seems to be quite a few fish out there. We've been getting some very big bluegills over the last couple of weeks, a couple of real giants also. But we're catching them much the same way that we're catching perch. We're getting them out in the basin. They seem to be mixed together, or the schools will come through, but they seem to just be in the similar areas. But the bluegills are eating a lot of the same stuff, you know, that gold tungsten jig covered in spikes. It gets it done on the gills as well. It's not rocket science. They go for that. What I would recommend you doing is, for both the perch and the bluegills, I notice a lot of people jig way too aggressively for them. They do these kind of up-down jigging motions, and the fish just haven't been responding very well to it. What I would recommend doing is, instead of jigging, I would try to quiver your bait. So get it about 1.5 feet off the bottom and just quiver it there. Make it shudder and make it shiver very, very lightly in front of them. That seems to be working best. If you simply leave your bait dead and just dead stick it, they're not very interested in that. It's that slight shivering or shuddering that they really like. And if you can do that while slowly teasing it up off the bottom, that's what really gets them to go. Now, some days you may go out there, especially midday when when the fish might be a little more lethargic, you might find that they come up and they show interest, but they just won't hit it. What I do on those days is I'll tease them up, and you'll kind of find a ceiling where you can get the fish to follow your bait up, up, up. A lot of times you find that about 3 feet off of the bottom. When I get them to that point where they won't come up any higher to follow it, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll open my bail and I'll drop my jig straight down to the bottom and let it hit the mud. This will catch some gills, but it's very, very effective on the perch. A lot of times you can get the perch to turn around and come right back at it. And they won't necessarily eat it off of the bottom, but when you lift it up about 6 inches and it pops back up in front of their face, sometimes they'll hit it right then. And then other times what happens is it just gives you another opportunity to shudder that bait and shiver it and tease it up in front of them again. And sometimes you can do it 2 or 3 times before they finally eat. A few things to remember: I would bring an auger extension, watch out for drifted snow, don't jig too aggressively for the perch and gills, and enjoy the weather this weekend, and good luck fishing.